Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome this afternoon on behalf of the Institute for Strategic and Defense Studies and the Hungarian Association for Military Science. My name is Tamás Varga. I'm a research fellow at the Institute for Strategic and Defense Studies. Today's discussion will be an expert roundtable discussion on the development prospects of Hungarian defense industry. And the idea came because the most significant Hungarian Armed Forces defense modernization program since the end of the Cold War, called Zrínyi 2026, has been progressing since 2016, and it's been underpinned and moving towards the 2% and 20% NATO commitments adopted at the Newport NATO summit in the past couple of years. And we have also witnessed some world-class military technology acquisitions, at least the announcement of these acquisitions. And these have the aim to create robust defensive capabilities for the Hungarian Defense Forces throughout the 2020s. Now, this comprehensive military modernization program also has a fundamentally important defense industrial dimension, of which very limited information has publicly disclosed so far. So today's discussion will primarily shed some light on these informations. Of course, everything here is open source and is underpinned by our experts. We do not share any secret information, so to say. Experts at the roundtable will discuss the key features of developing Hungarian defense industry from the very limited grounds that had existed by 2016 and the role of new acquisitions in research and development, innovation and production, as well as the potential international relevance of these new developments. Let me warmly welcome our participants and speakers. General Retired Zoltan Szenes, the chairman of the Hungarian Association of Military Sciences, also professor at the National University of Public Service. Colonel Retired Tamás Ráth, the head of the Military Technology Section of the Hungarian Association for Military Sciences, and Zsolt Lázár, defense industry expert, and fellow colleague of ours carrying out research in this field for years now. I also warmly welcome all the participants. I would kindly ask General Szenes to briefly introduce a publication that practically brought the idea of the current discussion into life.
So thank you very much for the invitation, and I like to show the book, the first page, the book which was published by our association, and the title in English, Hungarian, the status of the Hungarian defense industry and its development opportunities. The book, it's a result of the robust research conducted by one of our PhD student, Budovári Krisztina. She is at the same time the business lady working in the margin of the defense industry, in the company's owner and CEO, dealing with military-oriented research and development. So she has a tremendous experience in the field. The book is generally first chapter discussing the theoretical issues. Then she describes and analyzes the international and domestic environment of the defense industry. Then we could very substantial analysis of the current status of the Hungarian defense industry, and finally, as it was mentioned, looking at the future regarding to capability development in the light of our Zrínyi 2026 long-term army modernization program and its impact on the Hungarian defense industry. So 200 pages long. I like to also mention that the Hungarian defense industry, it was 8 years old last year, so just established about after when the Hungarian Habsburg Hungarian Empire was established. And then after the First World War, when we were defeated, as a bad consequence of the Trianon Treaty, the production, arm production was prohibited. So practically between the first and the second two worlds, the Hungarian defense industry ceased to exist. And then from 1937, there was a very strong and fast defense industrial building, and practically before the Second World War and during the Second World War, the Hungarian industry at that time was able to produce practically a very wide range of major military equipment from Messerschmitt. Majority of them were German, from Messerschmitt up to the Hungarian tank. And then after the Second World War, when the political changes took place and the Soviet power or communist power arrived to the Hungary, we were part of the Warsaw Pact and the Eastern Defense Industrial Cooperation. And because of the work division in Hungary, we didn't have opportunity to produce major weapons. So that's why right now we don't have a capability to build fighters, tanks, or military vehicles, major military vehicles. And the last point, after 1990, so also as a positive or negative impact from this point of view of the peace dividend process, the Hungarian defense industry, which was existed in the area of communication, electronic industrial branch. So even that flourishing part of the defense industry gradually had been dying, and practically we arriving to the discussion to the 2016, 2017, this year, when the government has been making strong efforts to reestablish the defense industry. And final word, we have a Defense Industrial Association. It's about 40 companies. We have about 5,000 companies dealing with export-import business in the defense industrial area, but the major weapons which needed for conventional armed forces, they are completely missing. So all efforts what we can see right now, and we will be discussing the import or production, everything associated with the program and associated with the current situation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce the book.
So I would like to take 3 minutes maximum to show some, so to say, data or information for those who are maybe not so familiar or fully familiar with the content that we discussed today, because those who don't use information sources in Hungarian maybe have only partial information. So what we are going to speak about today is the Zrínyi 2026 National Defense and Armed Forces Modernization Development Programs defense industrial background. The total budget of this modernization that's going to take place will consume an estimated 3,500 billion Hungarian forints. That's about 10 billion euros by 2026. And the 6 key areas or defense industrial clusters that is focused on are infantry fighting vehicles, aircraft and helicopters, plus air defense, ammunitions, small and light arms, command and communication, IT and cyber defense, and finally sensors. So these are the cluster areas that have been identified for future development of the defense industry. And of course, regarding particular procurement, our experts will also comment on these clusters in detail if needed. What are the not so formal guidelines, but informal guidelines that we can read from the development program? Well, first of all, the government and the Ministry of Defense wants to develop robust defensive capabilities for the Hungarian Defense Forces. These developments that are going to take place and have already begun have a very strong German interdependence and German cooperation element. Of course, it is built on a very strong supporting function for NATO capability development. The framework is NATO defense planning process, both in terms of supporting the framework nation concept of NATO and larger formations, and also the Hungarian multinational division central framework concept that's been developed by Hungary. A very important feature of these improvements is that it's going to be networked and regionally embedded. What we know so far, I mentioned the German dependence or interdependence, and also there seems to be some windows of opportunity for Central European wider cooperation, and also some outreach to Turkish defense industry. It is not even necessary to say that the Hungarian defense industry wants to achieve and develop cutting-edge technology and identify further innovation niches where these developments can be turned profitable and sustainable. And this would require that we should join the international defense industrial production lines practically kind of from scratch. And this is kind of like a startup for Hungarian defense industry in many respects. Maybe the most important question that also our experts will touch upon: how is it possible to make sustainable these developments? How to balance those must-have defense production capabilities that are needed by any country for supporting their defense forces, and what might be the profit-oriented sections of these further developments? What's behind? What is supporting the defense procurements and also the defense industrial development program? The increase in Hungarian defense spending trends. You can see some of the data here based on the respective Hungarian state budget and final account laws. We can see a steady increase since 2014-2015 with rather significant large leaps in the past couple of years. And I can say that we will see the effects of the COVID pandemics, but the further increase of the Hungarian defense spending is still expected in the 2020s. The official aim is to reach 2% of the GDP in accordance with NATO commitments by 2024. We can also see the positive change in terms of the internal share or internal ratios of the defense spending for Hungary. The share of equipment spending has been increasing since 2014. Now we can also see that we have surpassed the 20% NATO expectation in terms of equipment spending, and this has become possible through decreasing the ratio provided for personnel. To put into perspective some of the acquisitions and how much money we are talking about, not every detail of the procurement has been disclosed publicly, but here are some examples that we know from open sources. And if you want to compare, for example, one of the largest chunks of the procurement, the Links procurement and production plan, has a cost or a price tag of 700 billion Hungarian forints. If you compare this sum to the 2020 defense budget, you can see that it is even larger than 1 year spending for Hungary. Of course, this will be paid over a longer period of time, but you can see the significance and the weight of these individual procurement programs in the coming years. Of course, the defense industrial developments that our colleagues will discuss should underpin these aims as well. By saying this, I would also like to give the floor to our panelists. And after the introduction Zoltan was giving us, the first question would be, what was the situation of Hungarian defense industry around 2015 when the comprehensive long-term defense modernization program Zrínyi 2026 was adopted. What were those strengths and weaknesses or opportunities that force planning could build upon? And of course, how do you see what has changed since?
You are mentioning the date 2015. I think it's not a correct starting point, because if remembering the situation and the events, so practically to rebuild the new Hungarian defense industry, so the concept and the communication has been appeared just later, about 2017, 2018. And the program, which was approved officially, it was communicated already in 2016. That time we had the anniversary of the Zrínyi Miklós from Szigetvár, 450 years anniversary. So the program was already communicated in 2016, but officially approved by the government just 1 year later. And then the defense industry, okay, a program will be talking about targeting the modernization of the armed forces. But how the Hungarian industry, defense industry, will be supporting or associated with this program is just later on. So I think the concept of the Hungarian defense industrial modernization, it turned later. It's true to some extent, you're right, because even in 2010, when the current government arrived to the power, there was a program, the so-called HADIC, industrial rejuvenation program, but practically nothing happened over the last, during that first period. And then it was changed into the Zrínyi industrial modernization program, national program, which was targeted 2020, and that already this Hungarian arms and defense industrial program modernization was already included the Zrínyi plan. But again, it was just in the programs. The real change took place when there was a governmental commissioner was nominated, and then the negotiations resulted some big deals regarding the Air Force at the beginning, big transport aircraft and helicopters with EADS company. And then regarding to the ground forces, German companies, Rheinmetall. So practically what we have seen right now here regarding to the major military equipment, these two companies, plus the arms product, small arms production based on the Czech České zbrojovky company. So just try to finalize. So practically, conceptually, it's been part of the different governmental documents, but in practical terms, we just seen developments over the last 3-4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamás.
Thanks. So, as Mr. Szenes mentioned, we have a long way concerning modernization, defense industry, and home defense forces. So, but summarizing this long period, the most important thing that today we have a Zrínyi 2026 program, and it is very important that we fulfill some procurements, and really there is starting activity concerning industry. There are 6 clusters cover up all important fields which are essential for modernizing the defense forces. But I can tell you, imagine ourselves in 1990. At that time, capacities didn't cover all these that contains. So, to my mind, this is a little too wide for beginning phase of the program. I hope that we can find some direction in which we can reach a real result. For example, infantry fighting vehicles and, for example, other important equipment, artillery pieces, and others. Thank you.
Thank you. And Zsolt?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this roundtable discussion and for the opportunity to talk about the Hungarian defense industrial prospects. I would like to add some comments to Szenes, Mr. Szenes' thoughts, and then I will turn to Mr. Ráth's ideas as well, because he mentioned some very important key elements here. What is crucial to understand about the Hungarian defense industry is that during the 80s, more than 20,000 people were working in the sector, meaning that it was a very prosperous and important part of the Hungarian economy. Although, of course, the outcomes were not world-class outcomes, but in the Warsaw Pact system, Hungary was responsible for the telecommunication systems, more or less, but together with other countries, of course. But just to give you another country from the region, and we are going to talk about the Czech Republic later on as well. For instance, Czech Republic was responsible for training aircrafts during the Warsaw Pact period. So it shows that the Hungarian defense industry had capabilities during the Cold War, but after the Cold War, because of the economic stagnation and because of the different era, the Hungarian defense sector lost its capabilities. So around 2010, only around 2,000 people were working in the sector, meaning that 80–90% of the Hungarian defense industry were simply lost during the past previous decades. So I would say that the main strength of the Hungarian defense industry is that is still operational. And some companies survived the years of stagnation. For instance, and Mr. Szenes mentioned that we have 500 companies in the sector. Only a portion of that is doing real defense industrial development or any production at the moment. In the future, what makes me very optimistic is that the Hungarian government has a strong will now to develop both defense capabilities and defense industrial capabilities. Why is it important? Because in the past several decades, neither the will nor the funds were available for a project like this. In practice, it means that the Hungarian defense industry is going to develop some niche capabilities, and thanks to the initiatives, several industrial developments are ongoing at the moment. So, just giving you an example, for instance, the Czech small arms production in the countryside is already profitable, according to the news. And I hope that not only this one, but the other project, the assembly lines, for instance, are also going to be profitable, and in the long run, they are going to find not only cooperation with other, not only cooperation opportunities with other countries, but also export opportunities, both in and out to the European Union. What makes this possible is the fact that the European Union is also changing its approach to the defense industry, and Brussels tries to build a common European defense industry at the moment. So well, the future is brighter than the past at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any answers? Yes, Tamás?
Some information. So during the Warsaw Pact, Hungary was specialized, not the telecommunication, for electronic warfare. It is another field. Czech Republic was specialized NBC, mainly chemical measurement equipment, and they have past capabilities producing fighters, for example, Messerschmitt, and exported to Israel, and some small arms. Poland, locators and heavy armored vehicle, for example, tank, and Bulgaria, fighting vehicle. It is important. Thank you very much.
Just if I may, Tamás, 2 points. First, regarding to your very nice introduction with database. Very interesting. I just found some weeks ago the new statistics of NATO, and surprised me completely, because I found that Hungary now, with the GDP in percentage of the GDP last year, invested in the defense 1.85%. Which is helped us to move forward, and we are now on the 13th place among 29 nations, because Islam doesn't have armed forces. But which is more interesting, that in the area of development and acquisition, now we are on the second silver place, after Luxembourg, by the way, 1.35%. So the point here, that if government investing a lot, it's not, so when we are talking about defense investment, it's not just money of the Minister of Defense, because last year, if you can recall, our defense minister emphasized that last year we will achieve the 1.61% of the GDP. It's very important how we are going up to the 2% level. And NATO coming out with this data, which is 1.85. So the difference came from the governmental reserve money or border protection pocket, or I don't know from where. So what we can see for the first time after 1990, at least I'm sure, that the investment on defense, because of these defense industrial extra costs, I think, much bigger or higher than just the so-called pure defense industrial budget available for the Minister of Defense. And one comment what Zsolt just mentioned, I fully agree what Zsolt has said, but the niche capabilities, so I wouldn't say that we can see here in the terms of defense industrial development that they would target the niche capabilities, because when we are building a company around Zalaegerszeg to produce links infantry vehicle, tracked infantry vehicle, or now I just read the video when officially declared that the company will be build around Kaposvár, which will build the Turkish-Hungarian Gidran vehicled industrial. So these, or the Airbuses, which helicopter, what we already, the light transport helicopter we already bought, and the whole regiment now preparing for the job in the helicopter base in Szolnok, and the heavy transport helicopter will be arriving later. So what I see here, the defense industrial capabilities efforts in terms of defense industrial or capabilities to be achieved, they are not targeting the niche capabilities. They are targeting practically the limited conventional war fighting capabilities of the forces. In other areas, for instance, communication system, or which was mentioned here, the IT and other areas, I agree that that's already niche. But these major investment, new green investment efforts regarding to establish the Hungarian infantry vehicle building opportunity, ground forces, for the ground forces, it's not a niche capabilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, practically we are moving into the right direction. I was about to ask regarding these 6 cluster areas, and you already started to mention examples. Maybe it's time to turn to Zsolt to offer some comments in this regard, and then we can go on to Tamás. So regarding the specific programs.
So specific programs. Now, my opinion is that today we can continue these goals, and we have to manufacture these excellent fighting vehicles and other equipment and systems. But today there are some other SMEs, and I think that till now there is no discussion between the industry or MOD and with these SMEs. And there is a nice small booklet of Defense Association, and there are about 10 small SMEs. Their capabilities is excellent, and the products are good for export. For example, microwaves, which is good for satellite up and down converters, some decontamination equipment, or some armored vehicle. But there are no cooperation. And it is very curious whether in the future the Innovation and Technology Ministry or Defense Ministry want to involve these capacities. So these SMEs survived the bad period from 1990, and today they can live without MOD supply or Innovation and Technologies Ministry supply. But there are a lot of knowledge, and I don't think that we are so very we have huge money, so that in this case we don't want to cooperate them. It would be very, very important to involve these capacities because they can fulfill the shortage in the field of equipment, which is important to the armed forces, and can open a direction into export with different countries. And in this case, we can build other and wider activity into international direction with the help of these small SMEs. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Zsolt.
Yeah, I would like to add some comments to Mr. Ráth. I fully agree with him, especially when it comes to the SMEs. These companies survived the past decades And this is the reason why the government or any governmental body should cooperate with them first and foremost. Secondly, I don't want to push this topic that much, but in the past, there was an offset program, the Gripen offset program, and according to the original plans back in the early 2000s, the government, it was also a Viktor Orban-led government, was planning to invest a huge amount of resources into the defense industry. But since the Swedish partners were not able to find good enough companies in Hungary and technologically advanced machineries, later on, the offset program turned into another direction in which mostly indirect offset deals took place in Hungary. Why is it important, and why we have to learn from the past? Because in the long run, and that's only my opinion about defense industrial procurements and development programs, in the long run, those projects can survive in the free markets or in the domestic economy that are first and foremost deeply integrated into the national economy, into the domestic economy, and secondly, somehow attached to the subject of the procurements. For instance, if we have assembly lines here, then after the assembly, we have to work on the maintenance of the vehicles. We have to work on the development of the vehicles. So basically, this can guarantee that these companies will not bankrupt, will not go bankrupt in a short run. Otherwise, I do believe that the Hungarian government has some sort of a strategy here, even if we do not have too many information about the details. But we used to do, as a researchers, we used to do some sort of backwards engineering stuff. So whenever we see data or whenever we see an announcement, then we used to like trying to figure out what is in the mind of the decision makers. In general, that's why we can assume that there is some sort of a strategic planning behind these procurements. And let me mention another factor here we didn't touch upon, the political factor. Many times when we see defense procurements, then most of the cases, these are not decisions made by the Ministry of Defense. Most of these decisions are political decisions, and we can see from the Zrínyi 2026 plan as well that the Hungarian government is very much try to build on the European capabilities and try to link the Hungarian economy and industrial capabilities to the German one, which is first of all, it is good because they are close enough. We have experience with them. The Hungarian labor is trained. We do know how to cooperate with the Germans. But on the other hand, taking another example like the automotive industry here in Hungary, those factories are also in the hands of German multinational companies, and unfortunately, these companies and these production lines are not deeply integrated into the Hungarian economy. In fact, I would say that they are not integrated at all. The spillover effects of these firms are very limited. And I do hope that the same situation will not happen with the latest defense industrial developments. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and Zoltan.
I'd like to make two comments. First, which was the original question regarding to the defense industrial clusters, the 6 clusters which are named in different governmental documents. Based on my knowledge, and I tried to find the information in the website of the Hungarian Defense Industrial Association. So the infantry fighting vehicles as a cluster in Hungary practically doesn't exist. this investment regarding to links and Gidran might be resulted in growing cluster. If it's very important what my colleagues mentioned, that if the investment and the production and the cooperation will be deeply rooted in the economic, integrated into the Hungarian economy and providing some kind of leverage aspect to the Hungarian companies participating in the production. So aircraft and helicopters cluster existing has been existing since 26. So it's okay. It's a good area. Information and technology cluster also existing from 2003 in Hungary, so it's also okay. Small and light arms, unfortunately our leading company, the FIG, bankrupted, so practically we don't have a cluster, and probably the Czech involvement, depending on how they will cooperate with Hungarian companies, because we have at least, not too much, but at least half dozen companies building and developing Kalashnikov, for instance, so some kind of capabilities and technological knowledge they have. So, but it's not a cluster. And command and communication information, it's okay. Cyber defense is just we started. I would say we can also find a cluster type cooperation among the Hungarian companies in the country. And I don't know anything. I didn't find anything regarding the sixth cluster, which is the sensors. I don't know. But turning back to the governmental role and investment and what kind of strategy has been followed regarding to the new green defense industrial companies building program with what we've seen. So, but certainly we don't know that. We heard last time when we had the first round in Hungarian that the Hungarian National Defense Industrial Strategy has been already approved, but it's not for the public, so we don't know exactly. But we can see, particularly from the government commissioners' interviews, what is the strategy in this area. And the strategy is, as Zoltan mentioned, so practically we following the national car production investment strategy. We're bringing very powerful companies into Hungary. Rheinmetall, which is among the top 40 companies. But in order not to be failed, so because now we have money and armed forces and the police and other national security services, they can buy new equipment until they will be fully rearmed, but it will be not enough. So the idea behind this invitation, the idea is that these big European companies who are arriving the country, they have already market, they have already trade system around the world. For instance, the Czech Zbrojovka company, which is producing in Kiskunfélegyháza, small arms. I was looking some time ago the website. The annual product, 60% going to the export, 40% going to the US market, Israel. So the idea is that these companies, which will be establishing here, producing modern fifth level, so very modern cutting edge technology, they will be producing not just for the Hungarian armed forces and the Hungarian armed organization, but to continue the export activity. So for long term, after 5-10 years, they will be establishing the policy and practice to continue with this Hungarian-made, so-called Hungarian-made, like the of the Hungarian Suzuki car, Hungarian-made weapons in the export market. Big question: the impact of the Hungarian integration, level of the integration. From the defense literature, defense industrial literature, defense economics literature, we know that this kind of solution, they have different, or giving different opportunities for impacting on the national industry. So it's a big issue. But if you look at, for instance, the history of the Suzuki, or look at the history of Rába in terms of car production, after gradually, very slowly, after some time, they will have opportunity to develop some kind of high-level niche IT-oriented or classical industrial productive capabilities, which could be leading or part of the leading trend in the internationally. But it's requesting very careful planning and dealing with this process. So the role of the government, I think it's a key issue. Certainly it's not good when, if you look at the last 10 years, the defense industrials first was belonging to the Minister of Defense and the National Defense Economy Ministry, now the IT Ministry. So when you are changing the role and the responsibility of the governmental structure, different departments, different ministries, it certainly would not help to provide continuous, stable, long-term oriented and Hungarian defense industrial, pro-Hungarian defense industrial supporting strategy. So should be fixed who is responsible. And the Innovation Technology Ministry right now is responsible, but it should be fixed, and then next year shouldn't be changed and going back to the Minister of Defense, or I don't know. So it's also part of the defense industrial strategy to have very fixed governmental oversight and controlling, as we had in the old time. As Zoltan mentioned, that time the defense industry belonged to the middle industrial category, and then it was under the industrial ministry and fixed. And they provided guidance, principles, resources, organizational formation, and also funds for supporting research, development, and experimentation. Thank you very much.
Any follow-on comments on this, Tamás?
Yes, so who is responsible is very, very important. But I want to back to industry. So very, very important question concerning extent of the defense industry. So there are two possible solutions today: to buy used foreign firms and relocate factories, or to build a brand new factory or factories. So today we buy used foreign firms. This gives a rapid solution with for today equipment and technology and few modernization possibilities, because I don't think that we can increase process only what we bought previously. The second one is more difficult, but this will operate 30 or 40 years, and technology remain changeable, and it is very, very important. So the latter is better way, because first production can be more modern, and we can override with this production what will be what are on the market today. So we have to invest a lot for this totally Hungarian-owned industrial capability, because this will give an opportunity for defense cooperation, but not as a supplier only, but a great inventor. So previously there were very good defense research and development, and the results was not bad. And so we can introduce this, or we can start a new R&D process, and the results we have to push into the industry. And in this case, we can give some great solution to Hungarian defense forces and to foreign market. Thank you. And sorry, and I can tell a very, very important, because today we speak about these firms what we bought. So, for example, armored vehicle. And this capacity focused only one military equipment. And what is the dual capability when the market will full? So is there some civilian capability, or during a crisis we are waiting? So it is impossible. So there are no any information concerning this. So dual capability, American big firms, Boeing or Lockheed, have a very wide capability, not only into the direction of defense. So I think it is very important too. Thank you.
Thank you. And Zsolt?
I would like to add a comment to this research and development capabilities, because, I don't want to be too much negative today, but okay, let's start with the strengths here. What makes Hungary attractive? In general, multinationals come here because of the low wages, and because of the relatively skilled labor, and because of the very low corporate tax. But these are not the characteristics of a developed country. So if we want to work on research and development programs, then first of all, we should at least make some reforms in the education system, because the pro-Russian education systems simply do not, let's say, produce enough innovative minds. So actually, I'm also a byproduct of the Hungarian education system, but I studied in Sweden and in a British university. But the problem is that in the 21st century, lots of soft skills are needed, and not only the capability to memorize text, especially because all of us have basically the whole knowledge of the world in our pockets. So what we really need is a reform in the education system to get enough open-minded and innovative engineers, which we don't have right now. The Hungarian culture is not innovative at all. Nothing proves this better than the fact that Sweden is among the most innovative countries in Europe, but Hungary is probably the last one, or almost the last one in this list. So yeah, this is going to limit the defense industrial capabilities in the long run. Of course, it won't limit the assembly lines and the capability to product vehicles, but it will limit the industry's capability to develop new products or cooperate with more developed countries in research and development. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before giving the floor to Zoltan, follow-on questions on the very same topic. There have been some specialized programs for higher education announced that would provide skilled and innovative workforce in the mid to long term, of course. Do you see these justified and enough for these purposes? And also, how do you see, do we already possess a so-called culture of innovation for the defense industrial ecosystem that would make it possible to integrate the innovative elements you already mentioned previously, SMEs, startups, into these defense industrial cooperation that is being developed in Hungary?
I just like to refer the first question which was raised, how much the Hungarian defense industrial companies will be involved in the process. So will the current existing Hungarian defense industry win or gain some positive results? So as Kristina Budavari showing and explaining and proving the information, the first wave, so until 2020 or during the first wave of the efforts to develop and reestablish and develop the Hungarian defense industry, the MOD or state-owned companies, we could say there have been some kind of winners, particularly the Nyírtelek Arsenal company, which is the owner of the small arms factory in Kiskunfélegyháza. And also Nyírtelek has been involved in later, at least according to the news, in other businesses. Regarding to Gidran, so the Kaposvár investment, at least what we've seen from, understood from the Defense Development Commissioner's interview, some Hungarian companies will be involved in line with the Turkish company and the Rheinmetall German company, but we don't know exactly which companies. Even Gamma, I thought the Gamma will be involved, but the Gamma doesn't know about this one. So practically, right now, based on the public information, we cannot see what kind of direct involvement or what kind of direct impact on the current existing Hungarian defense country will be. So that's a big issue, big question. What we've seen here, and this is what I've seen from Dr. Taksás Balázs question. So practically what we've seen, that the government inviting and bringing huge, at least in European size, huge companies, and they establishing sister companies here, and they will be working in the area of defense. Regarding to the dual-use product, what Professor Ráth just mentioned, I checked some time ago the Rheinmetall website. So Rheinmetall, if you look at the Rheinmetall products, 60% it's military-oriented, so the defense industry-oriented. 40% they are working for the civilian market, similar like you mentioned the Boeing, Lockheed, and other companies. So from this perspective, because these companies, they have at least internationally wide, European-wide or worldly-wide strong trading system, company cooperation system. So in cases of these huge companies, this question that W's or not W's, I think is not an issue. And finally, what you mentioned, Tamás, the education. Now, education is the most difficult issue. So just turning back to the first issue, our university, the so-called Zrínyi Miklós National Defense University, we have a military technology faculty, which was closed in 2011. Faculty. And now what we've seen, the Ministry of Innovation and Development making efforts, Minister of Defense also making efforts to sign an agreement with already 7 universities to reestablish the defense engineer type education programs. But as we know, I'm operating now, working at the university from 60 years. So 5-10 years, it's not that long term in the terms of education investment. And if we look deeper, the technology, the Budapest University of Technology had a very strong defense industrial engineers education programs and faculty, hadmérnök faculty, which we closed, at least, I mean not closed, but because it's a university issue, but the support, funding support, and involvement of the Hungarian armed forces, Hungarian defense industry. So we closed the whole cooperation in 1997. And since then, this problem not solved. And the last point, very difficult, because now what I can see, we following the mainland American ideas. You know, in America, huge defense budget right now, more than 700 billion. If you want to develop something, the DARPA, the development agency, coming, giving you hundreds and hundreds millions, and then you're starting the program. In Hungary, no. Because still, I don't know, hopefully it's solved, but still matter which ministry how much provide. For instance, this your question regarding to the Defense Innovation Research Institute, the Wiki. Wiki already on that agenda for 5 years, and still we don't see the Wiki. So the issue here, the education to create and to develop, it's a very long-term program, very long-term. So I'm not too optimistic, because I could see over the last 30 years, zigzags, this direction, that direction, and it's difficult. So, and it's certainly not supporting the opportunity to involve the Hungarian companies with great, smart young people. Despite this is the official purpose now. I just try to refer the interview with our commissioner at our university. He invited young students to join the Hungarian defense industry companies, etc. But when there is a concrete example, for instance, my Turkish student wants to join the companies, despite that the Hungarian, Turkish, German company will be established, still the door is closed. So it's not open for her to participate. So just finishing, the education, even I would say more sensitive and more long-term program than to establish greenfield investment in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy that the discussion is getting heated. Zsolt first, and then Tamás.
Yeah, I have only a short comment now regarding to the SMEs. What we can see here, I do believe that the government has a hidden plan, and not the Hungarian SMEs, but close friends of the government can participate in this Zrínyi 2026 program. So I have some bad feelings, not only about the transparency, but also about the participants in the program. So yeah, it is going to be difficult to cooperate with the already existing Hungarian SMEs if the government has a different objective, and if the government tries to channel the project into other directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamás.
So, as it was mentioned, education is the most basic element of our modernization. If we cannot fulfill this education, the modernization result will be zero. No, but innovation culture was mentioned previously. So the issue of innovation culture is much more complex than we can analyze here now. So the equipment, the military equipment and tools currently and in the short term to be produced, for example, machine guns, pistols, ammunition or mortars, do not contain enough novelty to talk about technical innovation. So when R&D will start and its result will be in the production, on the market of these brand new equipment and system will create innovation. And if it becomes a chain reaction, we will be able to talk about culture of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two questions already in the line. One is from Ryan Brockhaus. Are there proposals within the Hungarian government to promote industrial or tech startup companies, for example, through tax incentives or funding that have a focus specifically on defense or weapon systems for the next years? The other question is about the transparency of assets procurement, the role of the Parliament Defense Committee. Do they gain detailed information? To what extent is it transparent? More or less like in the civil sector, how do you see these two issues?
Thank you. Thank you. Both questions very, very good and very challenging. Let's start what Mr. Brockhaus asked regarding the special program. What I can see that the Innovation and Investment Ministry, they have different programs named after different name. But the major issue that even if it's defense related, they are targeting, according to the European Union or other circumstances, they are targeted to involve companies in the cluster system. So when there is a cluster existing in the, and as we earlier we agreed on that in Hungary, in the six among the six clusters, just practically 3 working on. So the opportunity to reach these general, not just defense oriented, but general programs and different tech startup programs is very much limited, But I just read the news. For instance, the European Union also in the new 7-year financial cycle investing lots of money for supporting the research, development, experimentation, and production. And for instance, the last time I just realized in the website of European Defense Defense Agency, for instance, Rheinmetall was asking or applying for 340 millions EU fund to support the infantry, new generation type infantry vehicle modernization. I don't know certainly is it how much related to the Lagerseg, but the point here, turning back to the Hungarian question, so the first issue that if there is a cluster existing, then you can find opportunity. The second one, normally when EU funds, they are involved. The EU wants to generate, the cooperation among the most advanced developed countries and the Central Eastern European countries. Normally, you need to have partners in terms of research, in terms of production, etc. And this is also a problem because our defense industry not as developed, as advanced, that would have this kind of high-level complex networking system. Remember the last industrial and research development the big annual event took place, I think, 27. So practically we don't have big show, where the defense industry, defense research, development would be shown. So it's a problematic area. In theory, yes, but lots of but to answer. The second question, which was Mr. Szabadfalvi, regarding to the acquisition. Yes, the transparency of the acquisition and how much and how, certainly very low level. But if you look at Transparency International, Transparency International providing general, there is a division dealing with defense industry and defense acquisition. We are in the gray area, so we are not in the black area, not in the white in very, very small, but we are in the gray still. Number one, because not too much investment happened yet, just signed, we contracted. Number two, the partners, particularly if you look, I looked at EODS. EODS, it's a white company in terms of corruption, etc. EODS, white. Rheinmetall, gray. So, number one, that transparency is not good. Even I would say practically we don't have too much information. And regarding the question, what about the defense committee? According to the Hungarian, the public acquisition law and the legislation, there are two opportunities to ask special arrangement regarding to the military defense acquisition. Number one, you can ask the defense and law enforcement committee in the parliament. Number two, go to the National Defense Cabinet and National Security Cabinet, and then ask also this advantage. Furthermore, in the current government, established some kind of strategic importance investment. So even if there is a civilian investment, a civilian program, and the government saying that it has strategic importance, the database already not for the public. It's already confidential. So going back to the original question, certainly the visibility, transparency, even for the members of the opposition party is very low, which is concerning the official suggestion programs on the table of the committee. The response to this problem is that, yes, we don't producing, we don't showing, but if the person, I mean the member of the parliament interested in, he or she can go to the Minister of Defense or the Minister of the Investment and other ministries, and they personally, they can see the documents, but as they are normally secret-oriented, he or she not authorized to talk about this. So that's why the transparency very, very low in the Hungary. And finally, in the EU, defense industry, armed forces, it's a national business, so it's not belong to the common market, etc. So in generally, we joined the European Defense Agency just 1 year later than it was established, and also offered that, okay, we would agree if the investment would achieve, 1 billion, then our acquisition will be announcing the whole European Union countries. So it's everything on voluntary basis. And what we have seen, the government and the office, they are negotiating with different partners, and finally, based on the military requirement, based on the political consideration and the financial, they decide, okay, we will buy EODS. By the way, I personally agree that 80% of the whole investment, it's European made, so I agree with this one. But if you ask me what will be happening with, Zoltan mentioned that the treaty, the agreement will be expire regarding to Gripen 2026, and we don't know what is the plan, to continue, to close, or to buy F-35, or what to do with it is long-term business. So just to sum up, very closed information. Transfer is not too hard, but I can tell you that it's not just during this government. When I was in the power, we had the same. Except that that time, at least, we produced something more detailed program for the members of the parliament, but it was also not open and not flexible or not transparent. Look at the change from the Gripen 3 to the Gripen 4 generation, the Hungarian version. It was also completely hidden projects and confidential and not for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have comments from Zsolt, and I also would like to mention that we have a very good question regarding the life cycle cost and management of the equipment that is going to be procured and how it will be supported by the national defense industry. So just in advance to mention, we have the question from Chile, from Rodrigo Guajardo, and he mentioned the 1990s decade when they had similar experience in their countries, and that time the military expenditure reached almost 3% of the GDP, and in 20 years 5 armored brigades were created with German equipment. So it's kind of similar, even to a larger scale than in Hungary. And also there were aerial and naval platforms for the Navy and Air Force and so on. And then the defense industry assumed the sustainment of all the acquisition, research and development. Engineering was focused mainly to support to maintain those capabilities. So the question is, how do you see the future prospects in this regard for Hungary? But first, we have still comments from Zsolt.
Yeah, one comment on the transparency, then one comment on the Gripen issue, because that's also, let's say, that's the $1 billion question. So about the transparency, as let's assume that I'm an average citizen here and I am an aircraft and defense industry enthusiast, then I would say that the communication of the Ministry of Defense is way better than it was before, and it also true to the Prime Minister's office, because some of the communication is coming from that organization. But as a researcher, I would say that it is almost impossible to get detailed information about basically anything, not only about the Zrínyi 2026 program, but in general as well. I almost know the email that I used to get from the Ministry of Defense by heart. They used to say that I violating the national security with my questions, and all the details that I'm asking for are confidential. Basically, they simply copy-paste the answer from previous emails. But that's a transparency issue, and we need to improve that, because not only because of the research perspective, but in the long run, if you do not publish details, then the historians, for instance, won't be able to write books about this very interesting period of the Hungarian history. Okay, let's turn to the Gripen. Yes, the Gripen agreement expires in 2026, but it doesn't automatically mean that we have to buy new aircrafts first. Second, since the Swedish producer Saab has a new generation aircraft, the Gripen NG, basically we can move forward on the Gripen line as well. But of course, as Mr. Szenes mentioned, there were rumors and gossips about the procurement of the F-35s or about the F-16s. But well, this question will arrive in 2024, I think, when we are getting closer to the life cycle, or at least to the end of the agreement of the current Gripen generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now comments on the sustainability. Zoltan.
But I wanted to say also, touching the sustainability, certainly I favor for supporting the contract because we have achieved very high level cooperation with Sweden, and this is a multifunctional 4th generation. It could be developed further 4+ generation. And it took, just telling you, and this is also partly answer to Rodriguez's question from Chile, it took about 8-10 years when the Air Force logistics maintenance support was able to speed up to achieve that level. And the answer to what Rodriguez, it's a very good question. Certainly not easy, not easy. That's why I personally, for instance, the Turkish or even Brazilian, I don't think it would be a good idea because of logistics, training, education, and all many different aspects. Very difficult to handle in a small armed forces, 3 different type of equipment system. I was very happy with the decision of Lynx because now you know that all major equipment what we're buying now from Germany, they will be serving the so-called heavy brigade. So practically what we are talking about here, including the Leo 7, including Lynx, and including the 2000 tracked artillery, which will be coming next in 2 years, they will be part and armed just 1 brigade, which is the Tata brigade, for heavy purpose and for conventional warfare. But turning back to the question, certainly, as you, Rodriguez said, they were equipped by German equipment, and the relations with Germany completely changed. And the same with us. I attended 2 days ago in the General Staff Course workshop with Germany, and very interesting because the first everything which received was in German. So we need to refresh our German language, but we have problems with the Portuguese. When we suddenly hear that the first Embraer was bought as a positive impact of COVID, and I saw the first advertisement, the film. It was in, this Brazil transport aircraft is practically C-130 modified. But the point here, it was English and then Portuguese. So the point here, you need to change the whole system in order to support the new weapons to be first initial capable and fully capable. You can read in the military literature, for instance, the new helicopters, they are targeting or now challenging the current logistics system in the Hungarian forces, because the current logistics system, it's like the armed forces, it's a hierarchical one. You have problem at unit level, going to the operation level, and going to the higher level. But in case of Szolnok, when there is a problem with H145, the smart egg, the smart egg, as the soldiers telling, everything electronic, everything. They had to, and this is, you cannot do anyway, had to contact directly with the company, excluding the whole logistics system in the armed forces. So it's challenging, and the Hungarian armed forces realized it, and they established last year the new command, the so-called transformation command, and the purpose of the transformation to change the whole system in order to be able relatively smoothly adopt the new major military equipment, change organization, tactics, doctrines, training, logistics support, leadership, interoperability. So huge challenge. And I agree what Rodriguez, the conclusion, yes, it will be definitely strongly influence of the future support of the Hungarian armed forces logistics.
I would address an issue that some of the elements of defense industry are, so to say, must-haves to support national defense capabilities. Ammunition or communication specifically is something like a must-have for every country. But regarding the plans that we have in Hungary, there will be some parts that aim production for international markets as well. What kind of breakout points could you identify to international arms industry cooperation and arms exports regarding the plans that we have if you can see these, and what is the role of international acquisitions. We have seen the Hirtenberger acquisition and also Czech ones. We also have a specific question from a Czech colleague, Lukáš Dička, and he asked from me personally, how do you see a specific reason why Czech companies seem to have, so to say, over-proportionate role in Hungarian defense industrial development, including small arms and aircraft industry as well?
Difficult questions, but regarding to the Czech cooperation, the first one, the small arms production, it's from national point of view and military and defense point of view, it's important, the question of very high importance, because we didn't have national small arms production, modern weapons. And by the way, I was lucky to visit the company, and even I shot with the weapons, and very easy to target because they have infra system, and I was fully successful. But regarding to the Air Force, it's partly, I think, who doesn't know that 51% of the companies, it's already in the Hungarian hand. Regarding to the training aircraft, we right now are replacing the former Russian one, so we need, and we buy a new one. So to some extent, it's very good because we will be buying, I don't know, 4-6 new ones. So it's good for the company. But also when you, and this is what Rodriguez just asked, when you have this high-level military industrial cooperation, acquisition, etc., it also facilitates the military training and education the programs. For instance, in Czech case, we are also trying to join the Czech initiative to arrange the pilot program and not to send our pilots to Canada, which is the most expensive training program, to establish some kind of European or Central European. So this kind of business in the area of industry and in the area of the military defense trade, it very promoting, giving opportunity to have wide, more robust cooperation, including the military. So I can see it's a good one. Regarding to the mine or the Austrian investment, it's just business. So because we don't need as many as the company would be able to produce, so it's a business oriented. But the Czech cooperation is more encouraging. So I'm looking forward to have more positive developments.
Okay, Tamás?
So the cooperation with Czechs, Aero Vodohody, really is a very interesting story. That factory is very modern, and their plane is good for training. And many years ago, if I remember well, Boeing bought it because they imagined that these two planes are L-39 and L-159 planes are good for training in South American countries. But unfortunately, business was not too successful. So Boeing disappeared, and I was surprised when I heard that L-39 is good for Hungary, because there was a nice meeting when Czech partner came to Hungary and introduced L-159, and Gripen manufacturer told that really this plane is very good for training for Gripen pilots. So two planes is good, and maybe it is a good solution concerning financial, but extra exporting possibilities, I don't think that we will have. But I should like to push this topic that we can reach more better results than Czechs itself. So, and I can tell you that other equipment and vehicle has the same problem. So I don't think that we can export independently to foreign countries, for example, basically German-made fighting vehicle or others. So I don't know whether the agreement has some remarks concerning this situation. It is very interesting because today in the market, in the international market, there is a very nice process. For example, India bought T-70 Russian tank, and they don't bought it only the vehicle, they bought know-hows. So it is very interesting. I hope that in the next businesses we can or try to follow this policy, because buying know-how will give a great opportunity to modernize our products. Without know-how, we remain as a screwdrivers, but not a good manufacturer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Zsolt?
Thank you. And I really like the comments that were made by Mr. Ráth, because, well, the Indian procurement program is outstanding in a sense that India is trying to channel as many resources into its own economy as it is possible. And it is called, if I remember correctly, Make in India initiative. So whatever they buy, they also buy know-how, and in many cases they cooperate in the production as well, or in the worst scenario in the development of the vehicles. Same is true to Poland, because in Poland there is a very similar policy. It is called Polonization. So basically the same is true there. Whatever they buy, whatever they acquire, they try to buy the know-how, and they try to cooperate in the production as well. I wanted to add some comments to the L39 topic. Now I'm going to be the more optimistic person in the group, because the Aero, the Czech company, was extremely successful during the Cold War. So not only from the L39, but from the L29, altogether they produced thousands. So, well, it was, first of all, it was a successful product, but second, it was an important driving force behind the Czech aerospace industry. In the long run, since these aircrafts are still in service in several countries, mostly in Asia and some other Eastern Bloc countries, I do believe that since they are pretty close to their they are pretty close to their life circle, they are going to change to the new generation. Well, Vietnam has already bought the 39NG, although I heard that some African countries are going to be the first ones, so not Vietnam, but Vietnam was faster. So I do see some sort of an export opportunity for this product. But of course, as in many cases, since these are political decisions, politics can always ruin the opportunities in the long run.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure whether Zoltan wants to reply to this. Yeah, sure.
I also read this article, that's the news regarding to the Indian trading agreement with Russia, and even in relation, because the American companies also was competing, and we know the Russian one. But I just tell you, we are talking about heavy tank, that in order to do this kind of business, you need to have a neighbor, for instance, Pakistan, and different situations. So I don't think that it would be, but the idea that if you buy new equipment, new weapons, which is the Turkish one, which is the Turkish 300 about, and it will be also changing into including or towards the Hungarian needs. So it will be some kind of modernization involving Rheinmetall, involving the Hungarian military special requirements. So these are could be very helpful. And there was a question about, I think, Dr. Tamás, that about the EU procurement system, how it will be, will take it, or it's a free, so depends on you. So I don't think if we're looking at last 5 years that the governmental policy would be changed. The government wants to take it in its hand to decide according to the national interest, foreign policy interest, and other military economic considerations. So I don't think European Union integration will be not move further as we see in the debate. UAV, and question was Hungary does produce UAVs. I know at least about a dozen companies dealing with UAVs. For military purposes, more difficult, but we have AZRT, which is also dealing with UAV development. But we bought, and we have in the armed forces, we have Israeli UAVs. But UAV now, particularly in the light of the 44 days war between Azerbaijan and Georgia for Karabakh, now it's becoming more and more important. So I think that it will be also receiving higher priority from Hungarian defense modernization point of view. And finally, autonomous weapon system, I don't know, which I know just in the long term, so after 2030 from a Hungarian point of view. Thank you.
So I think practically we have time for one quick round of answers, and I will ask a provocative question, and I kindly ask you to be at least as positive as throughout the discussion, or even more positive. Where do you see the position of Hungarian defense industry in 10 years' time in Europe? And how do you see what should be the outcome of the announced defense development programs by 2030 in terms of arms production, arms exports, and defense capabilities for Hungary? So what's your perspective on the future?
From my perspective, everything, having seen everything, but certainly 10 years is a long term. Everything could be happening, and I how to say, experience when from one day to another one, the priority of the Hungarian defense modernization was lost during one day. But because of this investment, they are long-term and serious and involving international, strong international companies and partners, and the modernization plan is on the track. I think that it will be developing and achievable goals. So if extreme something not happening, these plans will be executed, and in 10 years term we would have more capable armed forces and some kind of strong in elements, not the full, but at least new defense industrial production capabilities, which would very helpful for the Hungarian defense.
Tamás?
This is a very complex question. So reverse the order of the question. What expect by 2030 in arms production? If we shall reach the 1990 level, then in the next 5 years, we can introduce some own R&D results in the production. And if successful, we can enter the international market. At the same time, the ability of the forces will expand significantly, but it also requires a lot of tactical exercises. In terms of production capability for defense industry, it may be able to balance with neighboring countries in certain areas in terms of quality rather than quantity. And the situation is similar in niche areas. It also takes time to get from the equipment to the system level. For example, in electronic warfare area. An existing factory is just a starting point for the operation of raw materials, and parts supply should be continuous. If we step out on international stage competition, will adversely affect these resources for us. So to reduce these effects, previously well-functioning organizations were good to be prepared in advance for this situation. It is very important. So the launch of military industry in the first 5 years is the key to continuous ordering, because the key issue, who is the customer? So the defense ministry can give or must create a continuous picture as a buyer for defense industry. It is very, very difficult, and I don't think how we can create this so-called long-term financing and producing activity. Thanks.
Thank you. And closing conclusions from Zsolt.
I hope that the Hungarian defense industry is going to be deeply integrated into the European one. We can see the clear objectives here, and the government is pushing this very much. But it is another question if it is going to be integrated in the Hungarian economy or not. That's another question. Hopefully it is going to be, and some SMEs are going to cooperate with these mostly German firms, and then these companies are going to have some very positive spillover effects on the economy. At the same time, I do believe that since the development and research capability of the country and innovation as well is on a very low level, Hungary should find some breakout points. So for instance, the IT and the cyber defense could be one of these. So in 10 years from now, I hope some Hungarian companies will be able to develop IT and cyber defense capabilities and world-class products, especially because Hungarian companies are already very successful in this field. I just want to mention two names. Prezi is well known worldwide, or there are other data recovery companies which are unique in this field, and they are also operate from Hungary. So this is the field, and this is the industrial sector, the IT and cyber, in which I can see that the Hungarian SMEs can break out and can develop niche capabilities. Other than that, well, the Hungarian defense industry is going to be integrated into the European one. It is certainly sure because the European initiatives are trying to push this agenda as well. It is not only up to the Hungarian government, but also up to Brussels, and they are into it. Thank you.
Tamás.
We always speak about integration and cooperation, and we mention NATO, Research and Technology Agency, European Defense Agency, and others. But in Europe, there are a very interesting organization, a treaty, under its umbrella. Really, there are cooperation in the field of production, and the name is OCCAR. So this is the only organization which can really a good aim to create new weapons, new armaments, and others. So OCCAR is a organization for joint armament cooperation. It was formed in 1966, and it was at the start is a closed organization, but today is an open one. So Hungary has to create some steps to become not a member, but as an invited nation to some topics. And in this case, of course, we have to create a lot of money to participate 1 or 2 programs. But in this case, it is a livable connection to European defense industry and the market. It is an extra good possibility.
Just quick, Tamás, and quick to the office, the central office of OCCAR is in Bonn in Germany. So I think sometime and we will be member of the OCCAR because of this German influence. Thank you.
I think we witnessed a discussion with key insights on risk and opportunities for Hungarian defense industry. And I think even managed to be more provocative than last time when we had a similar discussion in Hungarian. I hope it was useful for every participant. Thank you very much, very warmly for Zoltan, Szenes, Tamás, Ráth, and Zsolt Lázár for sharing your knowledge and information on the topic that we discussed today. We and also the Hungarian Association of Military Sciences will publish the record of the discussion on YouTube, and ISDS will also share the news on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I wish you good health and good luck in your work. Thank you very much for being here with us today.